Welcome to the Travel Like a Boss podcast, where we interview location-independent entrepreneurs that travel the world like a boss by being their own boss. Here's your host, Johnny FD.
Hey guys, it's Johnny, and welcome to episode 213 of the Travel Like a Boss podcast. I have a very special episode today. We are live on a boat in the middle of nowhere. Welcome to the show, Andrew.
Thank you, Johnny. How are you doing?
Yeah, really good.
Excellent.
So, you want to tell everyone where we're at right now?
We're out in the middle of the Maldives on a liveaboard called the Blue Voyager, and we're having an awesome trip so far. It's a 10-day itinerary, sailing around the islands and diving into the blue.
Very cool. So, I'm probably going to have a few different people on, but we'll start off with you. Can you tell us your name, where you're from, and what you do for work?
Okay, so name is Andrew Lee, and I live in the UK, and I'm a sales director for Europe, Middle East, and Africa for Sharp Electronics.
Okay, cool. And what got you into scuba diving in the first place? Do you remember your first dive?
Oh, most definitely. So growing up in Africa, I had the bush and all the wildlife. So when I moved to the UK, I lost that. So scuba diving became my new bush and my new wildlife. So it started 10 years ago, 2008, and my first dive was in a very cold quarry in the UK.
That is terrible.
Oh, it was.
I think that the only reason why I got into scuba diving was I just lucked out. I happened to be in Thailand in Phuket, and there's a little island called Ratchayai, which is just the easiest place in the world to dive. Clear water, it was warm, just fish everywhere, there's no current. It was just so easy. And I just thought, I can do this all the time.
Oh, well, you're the type of guy I used to watch on the beach while I was sitting there and watching them all go out and scuba dive. And I thought, no, I've got to do this. And I went back home and found out about it and never looked back.
Okay, so the first time you did it, how cold was the water? Do you remember?
Yes, it was about 12 degrees.
And that's Celsius or Fahrenheit?
Celsius.
That's cold.
It was cold. In a dry suit. Very murky. And
that's freezing.
Yeah, I did what all new beginners do. I sunk straight to the bottom and ended up in a pile of dust.
All right, so for the Fahrenheit fans out there, all the Americans, what's funny is I actually don't know Fahrenheit anymore, even though I grew up in the U.S. When I started diving, it was in Thailand, and we always use Celsius. We use Celsius and meters. So whenever I dive, it's everything is in Celsius and meters. And we have an American here who is smarter than both of us in math. You're going to say your name, where you're from, and the answer to this question.
Oh, I don't have the answer. I have the same story. I learned to dive in Fiji, where we dove in meters and Celsius and bar. And so going to the States or diving in Mexico or the Caribbean, where everything is in feet and PSIs, like crazy. I don't know how to do it. I don't know what diving at 30 feet means.
That's Katy, by the way.
Hi, I'm Katy.
Yeah, I would say this can be like diver tip number one if anyone's starting out, is learn in Celsius and meters, because most of the world that you're going to probably want to dive in uses Celsius meters.
Pretty much everywhere outside of America is Celsius and meters.
And you don't really want to dive in the U.S.
I haven't dived there yet, but hope to one day.
I've only dove in Florida off of Miami, which is not the best diving in Florida. Yeah. And I've dove in Hawaii, which had a really cool night manta dive in Kona. That was kind of similar to the manta dive we did here at night.
Yeah, that was awesome.
But I would say I wasn't that impressed with the diving in Hawaii. I thought it would be incredible. And, to be fair, I didn't do that much of it. But it just kind of seemed like, decent diving. But it wasn't great. And it was way more expensive.
No, well, you can't beat the itinerary that we've had here. We've seen pretty much everything. From diving with whale sharks during the day to manta night diving and shark diving nurse feeding at night, which was absolutely awesome last night, to having turtles and grey sharks and white tips and all around you every single day, as well as great company on the boat.
Yeah, well, decent company sometimes. No, but it's actually pretty cool. So let's talk about the boat itself. I think it's pretty cool that we're on... I didn't want to say yacht because it sounds a bit pretentious, but this is a yacht.
It is. It's master yacht, yeah.
It's 4 stories.
4 stories, that's right, with a jacuzzi on top.
Yeah, it's 37 meters, which is 120 feet. I had to look it up. So it's big. It is a really big yacht.
Big, spacious, with great rest out areas.
Yeah, and I know it's really big because most of the time I can't find anyone else. Like if I'm trying to find someone and they don't want to be found.
And there's no reason for that?
Well, I mean, just like sometimes I'm like, oh, where's Andrew? Where's Katy? And like, you just can't find them. There's so many nooks and crannies to kind of hide out on.
That's very, very true. It's a great boat for relaxation, and you can have as much social or as much private time as you want.
Yeah. And what's cool is we have a full-size dive boat.
Oh, yeah.
Right, like, literally just following us, which is kind of weird.
Yeah.
But it's awesome.
It's fantastic. I mean, it takes Donny, it takes 26 people with a crew of 3, plus the guides. It's a huge boat with plenty of space, toilet facilities, and even better, snacks when you come up from a dive.
Yeah. Well, what's funny is I actually never heard the word Donny until this week. I've always heard of dinghy.
Ah, yeah. Dinghy diving.
Which is like a tiny boat. And
That's
we have a dinghy too.
Yeah.
Which is cool.
Yeah, no, the little rubber duck. So that's most liveaboards in sort of Egypt and so on. But here it certainly makes life a lot easier and a lot more space on the boat.
So, like, how many liveaboards have you done now?
Oh, too many to count. So Maldives 3, Egypt sort of around about 30. So probably going on 50 odd liveaboards over the last 10 years.
Did you say 15 or 50?
50.
Wow.
Yes, I've been spoiled.
That's insane.
Yeah.
That is really insane.
Yeah, no, it really makes up the numbers on your dives. So,
and did you start with liveaboard straight away, or did you first start with normal diving?
No, I started with typical sort of UK diving and up to sort of high end of Scotland and the World War I fleet and Scapa Flow, and into Oban. So you could combine diving with also a whiskey tour later on in the afternoon, and then only later on mainly into Egypt. And then on to sort of spread my wings into sort of Maldives, and then even wider sort of Cocos and Galapagos, and that's where liveaboards come into their own. So
a lot to unpack there. Part of this podcast is going to be kind of just trying to figure out where the best dive sites are in the world, because I remember when I was starting out and I would Google best diving in the world, I would get the same rehashed, top 10 places. And even then, even kind of as a beginner, I knew that the people writing these articles have probably never been diving before. They would always write, like, I don't know, Blue Hole in Belize. They'd write Koh Tao in Thailand. They would write Great Barrier Reef. And, and I was like, you know what? Some of these are decent, but I guarantee there is way better diving than these 10 places that every single magazine or article, they're not even dive magazines. It's just like, it could be like a men's health magazine or something. Yeah. I feel like someone wrote this list out of the top of their head, and then everybody's copied it.
I mean, diving can be so diverse. It gets everybody's sort of choices and talents that they want. My top 3 are definitely Galapagos for the sea life and underwater life. It's like being in a National Geographic magazine. Then you can go all the way to as diverse as Mexico and the cenotes and cave diving. And then my last one, but also top of the list, is Truk Lagoon and the Imperial Japanese War Fleet in Micronesia. For me, those are my sort of bucket list trips.
I like it. So the one place that's just on the top of my bucket list is Galapagos. And I think that's the one place that hasn't disappointed me yet in terms of just asking people who have been there. And we'll probably try to get Katy to talk about this next because she's been there. No, wasn't you? No, Victoria's been there. Galapagos. Okay, well, we'll try to get Victoria on to share her experience. But I think there's a lot of places that, we hype up in our heads. Like, for example, the Great Barrier Reef. And you talk to people, and some people will be like, oh, yeah, it was great. And then some people will be like, it's actually not as good as people hype it out to be.
Yeah, it's one of those. I haven't had the pleasure to dive the Great Barrier Reef, and there are places like that which will maybe become over commercialized and not about the actual experience and the wildlife that you're diving with. And I think the more remote sort of places you go to, whether it be French Polynesia, whether it be Palau or Galapagos and so on, the further away they are, and the less people that are there diving it, the better their experience. The wildlife is certainly there.
Yeah, I mean, I could definitely see that. I mean, it's just the more divers, the more, things might get scared away or just don't want to deal with the crowds. But also, I think it has more to do with kind of development than it has to do with actually just the amount of divers. Because, for example, like in Thailand, there's no diving around Koh Samui, but there is around Koh Tao. And the only difference, because I think 100 years ago, they both had equal dive sites. Yeah. There's no reason why they wouldn't.
They wouldn't, yeah.
The reason why Koh Samui doesn't have good diving anymore, or any diving that has zero, is because it's development. So when they build beach bungalows or hotels on the beach, what happens is that sand, instead of having, trees and dirt kind of keeping the sand from washing onto the coral, what happens with this kind of just long white sand beaches is every time it rains, that sand just gets washed and covers the coral, and it just eventually just covers it and it's gone.
Oh yeah, I mean, you definitely notice a difference. So the more remote, you're getting the natural land and vegetation all the way down to the sea and actually into it, including the mango swamps and so on. Whereas as you quite rightly said, where you've got the development, you have nothing holding back Mother Nature from taking off the topsoil and dumping it on top of the reef.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why even in Thailand, the best dive sites there are the ones that aren't near the shore. So in Koh Tao, there's Chumpon, which is... It's just 45 minutes away, but it's a sea pinnacle, so there's nothing to cover it. There's Sail Rock, which is off of Koh Phangan, but it's also just a pinnacle. There's nothing there. And then Hindang, Hinwang in Koh Lanta, which is the other side, but that's also like a pinnacle. It's like a 4-hour drive from anything. So, and I guess Similans too. It's just not close to anything.
Yeah. I mean, some of the most natural diving that I've been fortunate to have, other than talking about Galapagos, is then doing something like the cenotes in Mexico, where you're going over, even as a recreational diver, you can do it, and you're going over seabeds that are a million years old, looking at fossils of conch shells, and the most peaceful environment with the sun coming down through, and that is completely remote and in the jungle, and that is probably the most peaceful diving that I've experienced. So.
Yeah, I like it. I think diving for me, it's kind of giving me an excuse to travel more.
Oh yes, definitely. See parts of the world that you would never ever have seen before, not being a diver. So it's a typical before I started diving would have been the sort of the resort on the beach and sitting there for 2 weeks and enjoying the sun and the pool and don't get me wrong, and the cocktails. But when you get in and you start diving, you can have that same sort of hotel experience, but on a liveaboard, in a remote part like we are now in the Maldives, no other boats around, watching an awesome sunset and after having a great day worth of diving. And you have the whole place to yourself. There's nothing better than that sort of enclosed circular experience.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And to be honest, like now when I think of just going to a beach or just going on, like some people go boating, right? Where they literally take a boat trip just to drive around. And to me, it seems so boring. Like, I like being on a boat to go somewhere to do something. Or if I go to a island somewhere, if I'm going to go to a tropical island, I want to do something while I'm there. I don't want to just lay in the sand. I mean, it's great for 2 hours, but after that, there's nothing else to do.
I mean, take the Maldives as an example. You can sit on one island for 2 weeks and see nothing of the whole area, or you can be on a liveaboard and you can cover a number of different atolls, waking up to a different place each morning and being able to have the diving experience as well. And that's just where liveaboards come into their own as a diving entity. Is that you can travel, for example, in Egypt, you can go start up in the north and go all the way to the south down by the Sudan border. And you just wouldn't be able to do that sitting in a hotel. Yeah, you don't experience the country, you don't experience the culture, and more importantly, you don't experience the wildlife.
Yeah, definitely. And like, it's funny because when I told everyone I was coming to Maldives, everybody just assumed it's a honeymoon destination, and it's just a kind of what they've seen in Instagram photos, people sitting on the beach with a coconut, with a cocktail. And what's really funny is my buddy Tung, he's here, and he wrote on his Facebook profile he's going to Maldives, and everybody said, "Oh, like congratulations on your wedding. It's a great honeymoon destination." And he had to comment back saying, like, "Oh, my wife's not here. I'm with Johnny diving."
Well, I'm the same. I've left the far better half at home, and she didn't have the leave this time to come out. But you're quite right. It goes from a honeymoon destination to being able to share it with a whole variety of new people, which has been a great experience.
Well, what's funny is I used to think that liveaboards were prohibitively expensive. That's why when I was in Thailand, and diving in Thailand, to be fair, is some of the cheapest in the world. So a dive might be, let's say, $30 a dive. So you might spend $60 or $90 a day. And the hotels are pretty cheap there. Food's cheap in Thailand. So I always thought, I can't pay $2,000 or $2,500 or more for a liveaboard. That sounds insane. But in reality, it actually, do you think it's more, do you do it more because it's the only way to see some of the best dive sites that are really remote, or do you think it's a good value?
Both definitely. I mean, you definitely get to see the best dive sites without a doubt. The day boats just can't reach some of the destinations that we go to, not only in the Maldives but in plenty of other places. And as for bang for buck or value per dive, you can't get the better. You've got the 5-star hotel experience of what you have on the Blue 02 or the Master Blue Voyager, the boat we're on now, as well as being able to have the superb diving that we've got off the reefs.
Yeah, and well, what's funny, I was talking to Sada, who's the Belgium girl here, and she was saying that in Komodo, the diving there is really, really good, but I didn't see the best sites because I was diving from a land-based resort, and the fact that the liveaboard could go so much further, basically I missed out on the best dives.
Yeah, she's a very experienced diver. She's done a lot of travel, so she adds real value to what she says, and that is the definite advantage of the liveaboard, is the variety of places that you can go and places that can't be reached from general hotels and day boats.
Yeah, it's kind of a shame because it'd be nice to be able to just stay at a resort on land, but I don't know. It's kind of nice being on a boat.
It is in a way because it keeps the dive sites in pristine condition. There's not too many divers on them, and it allows for the marine life and the parks that they are there to remain established and to thrive. So.
Yeah. Actually, what's funny is today I saw a diver that wasn't part of our group underwater, and I was surprised because it's been like 10 days, and this was the first time I've seen a diver underwater that wasn't part of our group.
No, I know. We've been very fortunate that we've pretty much had the dive sites to ourselves. Bar one or two, the whole 10 days has been us by ourselves. It's been great.
Yeah, it's crazy. And like in Kotal, it's so weird because every single dive you go on, you're probably going to see 30, 40 other people. It's just normal. We call them diver fish. Oh,
very much so. I mean, there's some dive sites in Egypt where you can have over 300, 400 people on one site spread over the whole of the dive site. It's crazy. It's sea of bubbles.
How's the diving in the Red Sea in Egypt?
Very, very nice. I mean, those were my first liveaboard, so very good memories. It's temperature's great. The reefs further south are beautiful in the colours. The beautiful places like St. John's, Daedalus, the Brothers, where you get not only the reef action and the soft corals and the hard corals, but also you get the pelagics as well. And then you go up further north into the Straits of Tiran. You've got wonderful long, deep walls there, as well as famous dive sites on wrecks such as the Thistlegorm.
Okay, so pelagics, for those who don't know the term, are what? Sharks
and your big stuff.
Like what type of big stuff could you see in the Red Sea?
Hammerheads, definitely. I've had hammerheads and I've had thresher sharks, as well as your typical white tips and along the reef.
Those are two sharks on my list that I haven't seen yet.
Oh no, they're pretty awesome there. We were very fortunate. We've had a dive off Daedalus where we've had 14 or 15 hammerhead on one side, then we've had a pot of dolphins come straight through, and then sailfish all in one shot. So there's just no other place you could get that. You get all that in sort of 5 minutes. It was an awesome dive.
That sounds really good. So for Egypt, is it one of those places where you should go on a liveaboard, or can you do it from shore?
You can do, but for the best experience is definitely a liveaboard. If you are a diver, certainly non-divers can be on a liveaboard as well. So don't take it that you've got to leave your partner at home who doesn't dive. There's certainly enough to do. It's just like a hotel. There's a sun deck. Most of them have a jacuzzi, so if you accommodation-wise and food-wise, you completely fine with being a non-diver as well as a diver, and everybody welcomes you. You're part of a big family once you're on board.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of have to because we're like literally having every single meal together for 12 days.
Definitely. Yeah.
So you get to know each other pretty well.
Yeah, it's always the first 1 or 2 days. Everybody's a little bit nervous, and until they get to know each other, and then by the time everyone's left, it's lifelong friends.
Yeah, I like it. So, where was your first liveaboard ever?
Egypt. So doing the northern wrecks and reefs was the very first one, and I was completely blown away, and so much so that I flew back to the UK and booked another ticket and flew straight back out the next month to do the exact same itinerary again, it was absolutely amazing.
Okay, so you recommend that one?
Oh yes, yeah. Northern wrecks and reefs or deep south, they're all fantastic itineraries.
Okay. Is this your first time in the Maldives?
No, it's the third time. Lucky enough to be here for my third time. So my third liveaboard here, and this time it's just a liveaboard only because it's a extended liveaboard, sort of 10 to 12 days. Where previously it's been a week liveaboard and then a week on an island before flying out.
Nice. And have you done like the north or the south yet?
I've been lucky enough. So I've done, the first one was the southern atolls, and the second one was all the northern, and now on this itinerary, the central. So pretty much over the 3 trips now, I've been able to cover all the different atolls that are there.
Okay. Nice. And like, what's the difference between, we've only dove the center atolls this trip, and the highlights. So I guess it's hard to say because we actually got a little bit unlucky with visibility. It's December 17th now. We started December 12th?
Yes.
And normally the season would have changed by now, and this would be high season with good visibility, great weather. We had a lot of haze kind of in the sky the first 5 days, and the visibility's been kind of mediocre, sometimes poor, and then once in a while good. But like it wasn't what Maldives is known for.
I mean, December's a changeover month, so the sort of sea cleaning itself, so you do get a bit of a haze there or plankton boom. Certainly the better months are January, February, March. That's probably the top diving months in the Maldives, and where the water is great. But I've been other times of the year. I've been later in the year as well, where in June and July, where it's also, even though it's a rainy season, we've had good diving here. I haven't had a bad trip or a bad dive. There's always something to see. If it's crystal clear, you're going to see the great big pelagics and the mantas and the whale sharks. If it's a little bit hazy, you start to focus a little bit more on the macro, and you start looking for the smaller things, which are just as exciting, such as the shrimps and the octopus and that sort of stuff that are all around and hiding. So each dive is unique in its own, and as the saying goes, there's never a bad dive, just a bad diver. So.
Yeah. Well, I definitely think there's some easier dives that are kind of easier to look around and just be like, oh, everything's amazing. And you know what? I think I try to enjoy any dive, whether, whatever the weather or the visibility is, especially because you can't always control it. But the few times that we had really good viz and really good weather, it made me think this is why people come here. It is mind-blowingly incredible.
I mean, you'd look at the night dive we did with the nurse sharks last night, where you sat down and you had over 100 nurse sharks above you. You had nurse sharks coming in, diving in between you, feeding and so on. With the rays, the previous before we had the manta night dive as well, with coming right up, almost sliding up your bodies as they're doing their barrel rolling, as well as the mantas we've had during the daytime on the cleaning stations. There's always been something different to see each day. And then of course the whale shark hunting, searching for that elusive whale shark for 2 days, and then all of us in the land and the sea, diving with it. Great experience.
Yeah, it was cool. So I would say the kind of highlights of the center atolls with those 2 night dives, the one with the manta rays and then the other one with the nurse sharks. It'd be the whale sharks if you could find them while diving.
Oh, yes.
We didn't find them while diving, but we got a snorkel with them, which is pretty cool. Baby whale sharks here. And then there was a manta kind of day. I think, so we jumped that same site twice. In the morning, we didn't see it. And then the afternoon,
we had 3 manta.
I actually skipped out, but you guys saw 3 of them.
We had 3 manta close up over our heads onto the cleaning station, hung with us for quite a while. And on the other days, we've had great shark action today in the morning on both dives, hooking onto the reef because of the strong currents. So the stronger the currents, the sharks come in.
Yeah, I guess that's another highlight is they're all black tips today, right?
Grey reef sharks.
Grey reefs?
Yeah, grey reef sharks mainly today.
And a ton of them.
A couple of white tips, a huge amount. So got to have your GoPro on a sort of wide screen.
Okay.
And we've also had quite a few eagle rays as well. So being able to swim up close to the eagle rays, taught how. What has been fantastic about the liveaboard is that we've had people come in from the Maldivian Institute and research organization who gave us a talk on whale shark, and also we've done some manta identification. So it's a learning process as well that's been on the boat, and we've had some fantastic presentations, both from the hotel management on the boat and from our external source. So it's also a learning experience as much as you want it to be. And then you've also got a downtime. You've just had an evening on a desert island watching a sunset, drinking a beer. What a better way to have deco time after the dives.
Yeah, it's been nice. I really liked it. So for the northern atolls, are there some highlight dives?
Sydney Bar and Ra, and you go to a place called Hanifaru, and you have all the mobula rays, and they're just barrel rolling, and you sort of have, well, I saw maybe Manta, and mobula mantas, and you have we had about 50, but you can get 200, 300, 400 all at a time. I mean, pretty much as we were told today, you can almost see them from space. There's so many there when they're in season, and that's in a national park, and you get to snorkel with them, not necessarily dive with them. But each area is different, and each area is unique in its own. So you can't even say there's a favorite atoll. Yes, I probably prefer the south, maybe a little bit more for the bigger pelagics and the channels and the stronger currents. But then you get to dive with mantas up in the north, and you can't knock that.
What are some of the highlights dives in the south?
Mainly on the channels, similar to what we sort of done today. You're going into a channel, going down to between 25 and 30 meters. So I suppose in all money, that's about 100 feet, 80 feet to 100 feet. Hooking on and actually just relaxing and watching the world go by. It's kind of like the underwater version of sitting in a cafe having a cup of coffee and watching the world walk past.
Yeah, it's actually kind of cool. I think I've seen like a cartoon about that where it's almost like a super highway where you're just watching
definitely
sharks and fish swim by.
And as they get used to you, they come closer and closer and closer, and nothing to be scared of. It's just a great, awesome experience.
Okay. I can see myself coming back to the Maldives again to do either the north or south. What do you think I should do first?
It depends on the season, so it depends where you can go. But either are they all just as good as each other, and just come with the right season, because some you'll have whale shark sightings more prevalent in one month, and then you will and other things in another month.
Okay. Yeah. Very, very good point.
Yeah. So do your research. Hook it up. I mean, when you phone, you book ask them the months, and they'll tell you the best months to come.
Okay. Yeah, I like it. So aside from Maldives, what I want to say, would you say Galapagos was the top?
Galapagos is my personal top, and as I said, it's like driving in a National Geographic magazine. No matter where you look, so it wasn't so much just seeing one thing on one day. On one dive, you may see a whale shark, you may see hammerheads, you may see a Galapagos shark, you may see tiger sharks. You had 7 or 8 different sort of pelagics and species, all in a 1 hour, 60-minute dive. It's sort of wildlife on steroids, really. Yeah.
Okay, I like it. You know what's crazy is they say that one of the best things about scuba diving is in 1 hour you can see more life than you would hiking through a jungle or for months or even a year.
Yeah, certainly the big stuff. I mean, it's just amazing. But it's like any sort of thing that you're looking at, whether you're looking at wildlife on land or whether you're looking at underwater. It's about picking the place, sitting there, and waiting for it to come to you. If you chase it, it goes away. So you can spend a week running around everything and not seeing a thing, or you just hook in, or pick a hide, and everything else at some stage has to come past, go for a water drink, or feed off a reef.
Yeah, I like it. So okay. Aside from Galapagos, what is another top place you've been to?
For me, Truk Lagoon.
Where's that?
So Truk Lagoon is in Micronesia, just south of Guam, and that is where, for a little bit of American history, so the Japanese Imperial War Fleet was stationed there during World War II, and from there they launched the attack on Pearl Harbor. The Americans, after Pearl Harbor, then had Operation Swordfish, and they sent the reconnaissance planes over because the main battleships, Japanese battleships, were there, and they actually spotted reconnaissance planes, and the battleships went out, but there remained 70 frigates were there, carrying all sorts of things, from tanks and armaments and so on. Submarine base. There was also a seaplane and Zero base there in Guam, and they destroyed it, and they've become the wrecks of the century.
So would it be made for the wrecks, or are there also a lot of
wrecks? But the wrecks, it's so rarely dived that the wrecks in themselves have become reefs.
Okay. I mean, honestly, I've never really been that into wrecks. I don't know why. I'll check them out sometimes, but it's never been a top priority for me.
Yeah, it's some people are into metal, some people are into reefs. I like both, and I like the history. I like the history of the wrecks and understanding it, and also the beauty of it. It's a remembering. Also, you're people lost lives, you're remembering them just by going to the site. So there's emotion to it as well.
Okay, that makes sense. All right, and I guess kind of quickly, what are some of the other kind of what do you think the top 5 or 10 places in the world to dive are?
Okay, for me, Galapagos, Truk Lagoon, Mexico and the cenotes, Maldives, and Egypt.
Okay, nice. And has there been anywhere that you've been where you wouldn't go again, where it was a little bit overrated?
Probably the Mediterranean as a diving destination. It's a cold water, and unfortunately now a Dead Sea due to overfishing. So while still a very nice holiday destination and lots of beautiful countries around the Mediterranean, as a diving destination, not the place for me.
Where did you dive in the Med?
I've dived all around Spain, Malta, and all the way up to Greece.
I've done the same.
Yeah.
I've only snorkeled in Spain. Because I knew the diving wasn't going to be very good. I went diving in Greece, even though I knew it wasn't going to be very good, and it wasn't very good.
No,
but yeah, it's unfortunate.
It is. It's just it's almost an enclosed sea, and over time has become overfished.
And you know what? That's the biggest problem. Yeah. And it's sometimes governments incorrectly think that because there's too many divers, that's what's destroying the oceans. It's not. If anything, it might be a tiny impact if you have just too many, especially if it's lawless and people are throwing anchors over. But the real damage is being done by global warming, water temperatures rising, killing all the coral, and overfishing. And not just overfishing, but the type of fishing that people do. The bottom trawling or the long line trawling, we're just killing everything.
Most definitely, and probably the biggest concern now is plastics in the ocean and the damage that they're creating. So if any of your followers are down at a beach, pick up a piece of plastic and put it in the bin, and it helps the environment.
Yeah, and if anything, I think having divers, we're basically ambassadors for the sea. We see what's going on. I mean, even for me firsthand, in the last 10 years that I've been diving, I've seen Thailand, just change underwater. Way less fish. Corals, are damaged, and it's being able to see that firsthand. It's sad, but it's also very, hopefully divers become in a position where we can make laws, where we can, influence laws to protect what is something that most people don't see.
Yeah, I mean, we divers become the ambassadors of the oceans, and it's up to us to, if we want to sort of preserve that environment for not only for our own enjoyment now, but for the next generation's enjoyments. It is an education process, and to try and protect that very, very delicate environment and fragile environment that we have.
Yeah, I love it. So appreciate you coming on.
It's a pleasure.
The show. We got a couple more days of diving. It's been fun.
It has.
Yeah. If people want to check out your YouTube channel to see some of the videos that you made on this trip, how can they find you?
Andrew Lee on YouTube, and I'll give you a link for them to find.
Yeah, because Andrew Lee is definitely not going to come
up.
No,
it's going to.
They can search on YouTube for it. Andrew Lee Galapagos.
Yep.
Okay.
And you'll see some of the stuff there, or Andrew Lee Truk Lagoon.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Tony.
All right. So up next, we have Katy, who made a cameo at first. Katy, you want to say your name, where you're from, and what you do for work?
Hi, I'm Katy. I am from Texas originally, but I live in Los Angeles now, and I do logistics for television.
That's cool. So, how often do you get vacation time?
I'm a freelancer, so I sort of take my vacation time when I can between jobs. I usually work about 9 months a year and take the other 3 off, but it depends on the year and what shows come my way.
It's cool that you chose to do liveaboard, especially on your own too, as a vacation. That's not normal, right? It's not typical.
I guess I'm so used to traveling by myself. A lot of my friends either don't have the finances to travel as much as I do, or they don't get the vacation time, and so finding a balance is really tough. And I figured out a long time ago that I could either wait for someone to have the same, goals and travel plans as me, or I could just do it by myself, and haven't looked back since.
I think a cool thing about doing liveaboards is you're guaranteed to even if you come alone, to have 10, 20, 30 people who have similar interests.
Oh,
that
yeah.
you probably could get along with.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's a captive audience too. Somebody's got to talk to you, right? I say this frequently to people who ask me, how I could possibly go on a trip like this by myself. And really, I found that you're never lonely in a group of divers. We all tend to be kind of diving nerds, especially when you're talking about someone who's willing to invest the time and the financial resources into doing a liveaboard. You're talking about dive nerds. So people want to talk about fish they've seen, places they've been, anything related to diving, tech, gear, whatever. You've got an automatic something in common, which I think really helps a lot.
Yeah, I find that as well. It's always kind of easy.
Yeah.
Easy conversation.
Yeah, it's easy to get into, and then obviously it transitions into other things, and you learn other non-diving related things about the people you're basically living with for a week or 10 days.
So what got you into diving in the first place?
I was working on a show in Fiji, and the first couple days off that we had while we were there, everybody was going out diving, and I was really honestly just kind of tired of being left behind. So, FOMO basically. I wasn't able to dive as a child. My dad dives, my brother dives, but it was never really an option for me because I couldn't equalize my ears. So, I decided to try again as an adult and had a lot more luck. And now all the people I work with really wish I would shut up about diving.
That's cool. So do you still have trouble equalizing?
No problems at all. It's been...
You think it's just something you kind of grew into or grew out of?
Yeah, I think you grow out of it. I mean, I'm sure some people don't, but I got lucky and I did.
Okay. And where was so did you dive in Fiji?
Yeah, I learned to dive in Fiji. Used my per diem to walk down the beach to the little dive shop at the next resort over, and 2.5 years later, here I am.
Wow, that's cool. How is the diving in Fiji?
It's really beautiful. The viz is almost always awesome. Obviously, if they get a big storm comes through, that changes things. But for the most part, the viz is beautiful. The reef condition really depends on where you are. The closer to the mainland that you are, the more overfished it's likely to be. But there are some more remote places in Fiji that are beautiful. And then there's obviously a very famous shark dive at Benga, where they do feed the sharks, which is controversial, but it is an incredible dive. They do a lot of good conservation work.
What kind of sharks are they?
Mostly bull sharks. I've only done it once. They do occasionally get tigers, but I unfortunately didn't see any.
But even bull sharks, that'd be crazy to see that.
Yeah, and they're big and fat because they get fed twice a day, 5 days a week. So it is there. People feel a lot of ways about shark feeding dives. This one I think probably does more good than harm, because basically they've created a preserve, and the money from that diving pays the villages that would otherwise overfish that area. So it also does a lot of bringing awareness to big animals and people seeing that, sharks are these incredible animals and they're not man eaters, even though bull sharks can be aggressive towards humans. I think it's really important for people to see that, you can have a positive encounter with a big shark.
Yeah, and these are big too. Like, how big were these guys?
They were probably between 3 and 4 meters. It's been over a year since I've done that.
10 and 12 feet long.
Yeah.
So pretty big.
They're pretty big sharks. They're not the monster, 4, 5, 6 meter sharks that are out in the world, but they are a chunky 4 meters.
They're like the pit bull of sharks, right?
Yeah, they are very girthy, particularly where their fins meet their body.
So, I guess, it's almost kind of crazy how casually we talk about diving with sharks. To someone who hasn't done it before, Like, I mean, I'm sure your friends, like when they see, videos of photos, like what do they think?
Yeah, well, the ones who dive are always really jealous. I posted a video of our nurse shark dive last night, and one of my friends who does dive wrote me back and was like, I hate you. When are we going to Mexico? But for people who don't dive, obviously we grew up with the movie Jaws and...
Dun, 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 dun.
And so with that perception of sharks, yeah, of course people are terrified to get in the water. And you do hear stories about surfers and getting attacked by sharks or swimmers and that kind of thing. And the reality is that more often than not, it's a case of mistaken identity. And the other thing that people don't really think about is when we're curious about something, we usually reach for it with our hands to figure out what it is, unless you're a baby and then you put it in your mouth. And that's kind of the way sharks are. Sharks don't have hands. So in order to figure out what something is, they have to take a little sort of test bite. And so if you're backlit on the surface, you, especially in a wetsuit or on a surfboard, you could be a turtle or a seal. When you're underwater, they have a better idea of what you are. And so the likelihood that they're going to come and take a little nibble out of you is really dramatically reduced.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, like, when I dive with sharks, I kind of just assume... And I think the assumption is correct. Like, they don't want to eat us. Like, we're not their food. We don't taste good to them.
No.
And if it happens, it's by accident, almost always at the surface. Do you ever think, we're taking a risk? Or is it just, like, such a small chance that we're just like, it's like, getting in an airplane. It could crash, but most likely it's not going to.
Yeah, of course. And you're talking about a wild animal. So, yeah, of course, there's always a chance that you do something that startles the shark and they react in a way that you'd rather they not. But again, I feel that the risk is relatively small. So I don't worry about it, especially if it's a species that I'm familiar with, that I've dived with before. And I would imagine that if there was a species that I really needed to behave a certain way around, that the dive guide would give me a little heads up.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I kind of think of it as, if I went hiking, there's a chance I might hurt myself and I might die.
You could get eaten by a bear, and a bear is much more likely to be aggressive towards you than a shark.
And at the end of the day, it's so beautiful to dive with sharks that it's like, it's one of those things that I'd rather take the small chance than sit at home and not do anything and not enjoy life. Right?
For sure. I would blow bubbles any day rather than not blow bubbles.
I like it. Well, we just heard the dinner bell go off, I believe. Or no, did it not? Why is everyone sitting upstairs still?
I don't know. I think
maybe they're waiting for us. So let's grab some food and let's continue this podcast.
Boom. Meow.
Part 2. All right, so we just got back from dinner.
Delicious dinner.
The food has been really good, actually.
Food's been great.
Yeah.
Really no complaints. Lots of variety. Yeah, no complaints.
It's
tasty.
It's kind of weird. On Liveaboard, it seems like our daily schedule is you wake up, you eat, you have a light breakfast, like cereal, bread. You would dive. You have a full breakfast.
Second breakfast, like hobbits.
Second breakfast, yeah. You rest, dive, lunch, rest, dive, dinner.
So our lives are basically controlled by this bell. And you really only have to know 2 things. And this may be less for guys, but the bell rings and your hair is dry, then it's time to dive. If the bell rings and your hair is wet, then it's time to eat.
Oh, that's pretty smart.
And that's all we do.
Yeah,
and we're like trained.
I haven't looked at the time, and I haven't worn shoes or even flip-flops in 10 days.
I haven't worn underwear.
Ooh.
Bikinis, but
okay,
no underwear.
So, like, why do you do this? Like, why do you come on these boats?
I think, like Andrew said, it's just a really awesome way to, one, be surrounded by like-minded people who really care for the ocean and are interested in a common hobby. But also, you get to see the best dive sites in the world, and you don't have to do anything except for show up when the damn bell rings. You know, the gears, you set it up once and they just refill the same tank. It's such an easy way to dive and really fun as well. And on, you know, the bonus on top of that is that you're seeing sites that are, or can be, really untouched, and, you know, reefs generally in really good condition because there's not the daily traffic and all the pollution and all of that. So it's easy diving on, it's not necessarily the physical aspects, you know, with currents and all of that, but it's an easy holiday. You know, most of the work is done for you. Somebody cleans your bathroom and fills your tank and all of that, and you just show up and dive.
Yeah, it is kind of a weird mixture between not having any responsibilities, but always being exhausted and always wanting to take a nap.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've another perk. I always sleep super well because, you know, 3-4 dives a day and being out in the sun and in the water, it's exhausting. So excellent rest.
Yeah. Well, okay, so your non-diver friends back home, especially in LA, do they think you're insane for doing this? I mean, because it's expensive and it's your whole, like, your whole vacation.
I mean, as a freelancer, it's not necessarily my whole vacation. I'm pretty lucky I usually work about 9 months a year and take 3 off. So it's not all of my vacation time necessarily. It could be, depending on the year, but I think at this stage, my friends at home, most of the text messages I get from them start with, "Where are you right now?" So I think they're just used to it.
Yeah, because you travel a lot for work, right?
I travel a lot for work, and then when I'm not working, I don't really have a whole lot that ties me to Los Angeles, so I prefer to use that time to travel instead of sitting on my couch watching Netflix or going to the, you know, same bar I've been to a million times. Get out and see the world.
Yeah, I like that. And it's kind of cool. I mean, so a lot of our episodes normally aren't just about scuba diving or travel. A lot of it is having or creating an alternative life where it allows you to travel and have more than 2 weeks off a year.
Absolutely.
So a lot of the guests, you know, they either run like their own businesses, the entrepreneurs, but it's cool hearing that there's another path where you can work as a freelancer, and not a freelancer online, but a freelancer physically at locations, but still have the ability to travel.
Yeah, I mean, and for me, it's a lot of prioritizing, you know, where I want to spend my money. And people always ask me, you know, how can you afford to do this? How, you know, every 6 weeks you're somewhere different. And, you know, it's just about making it a priority. And if you make it a priority, the money will work itself out. But if you're going to the bar and dropping $100-200 a night, you know, 2-3 nights a week, you know, there's a plane ticket to, with airfares the way they are now, you know, from Los Angeles, you could get to Asia for $600 if you find the right deal. You could get to Europe for $600 if you find the right deal. So it's possible. You have to, you know, choose the right priorities, and then having a flexible work schedule as a freelancer. You know, I don't have health insurance. I don't have a 401k, but for me, the trade-off is I have a life that I really love.
That makes sense. And what you said about the expenses and, you know, going out to drink, I was just in LA, you know, a few months ago, and I remember we went to have Mexican food.
Yeah,
at like a decent place, not like a taqueria, but just like a trendy kind of restaurant.
Kay and Dave's.
I don't remember the name of it, but it's something like that. And then we had you know, one drink each with a margarita, and I remember I didn't even order the most expensive combo because I wanted to save some money.
Yeah.
and it was still $40 or $50 a person after tax and tip. It's insane.
Yeah.
And then we went to a bar, and we had, we ordered one drink each, and it was like close to $20 a person after tip. It was like $16 or $17 for a cocktail.
Yeah, I mean, even at places that are not crazy expensive in Los Angeles, $8 to $12 for a glass of wine. Don't get me started on the LA craft beer scene. I mean, you can spend $15 on a 8-ounce pour. And don't get me wrong, I love a really good beer, but it all adds up.
Yeah, it's crazy. And, the thing is, people don't really... I think the thing that really made me realize how much money people are spending, and without realizing it, is they wouldn't bat an eyelash. And nobody looked to see what the prices of the drinks were before they ordered.
Yeah, I mean, and you can have money just disappear that way. And so for me, it's been a combination of being really conscious of that. And obviously, I'm not sitting at home alone on every Saturday night, although love me a good Netflix night. But you make those, you can make some smart choices and it's like they say, you cut out Starbucks for a month, and if you're, spending $5, that's $150 a month that you could spend somewhere else. So.
Yeah, that's true. And does your work ever send you, where do they, what are some of the places they send you?
It really depends on the show. I've been to both Cambodia and Fiji for work, Canada, specifically Toronto, New York, Washington, D.C., a bunch of little tiny towns in the United States that no one's ever heard of. I've been to Nashville for work, Orlando, Chicago. It really just depends on the show and where they're shooting.
And if you want, can you stay a little bit longer afterwards just to travel or see the place?
Yeah, that's always an option, depending on schedules and some shows for... insurance liability reasons, they want you in on the day that you're meant to arrive and out on the day that you're meant to leave for work. But yeah, for the most part, if you're not moving on to another city with that show, then stay a couple of days or, make the most of... For me, what's been really fun is making the most of days off. I was with a really fun crew in Buffalo, New York, which is... no offense to my loves in Buffalo, but not my first choice destination. And we were kind of at a loss for what to do, and then realized how silly we were being that close to Niagara Falls, not just going and spending the day, which was beautiful and amazing, and the weather was crap, and we had a great time anyway.
I like it. That's cool. So what are the liveaboards you've done?
Just this one, and about 6 weeks ago, I did one in the Red Sea.
So you went to Egypt. Cool.
Mm-hmm.
What'd you think of that?
It was beautiful. I did the northern route, so Rex and Reef, and as Andrew mentioned, Thistlegorm is well worth the trip on its own. The dive guide, I have not fact-checked this, nor would I know how to, but the dive guide said that they've been really aggressive about protecting that area because it allegedly, that one wreck brings in more money in tourism dollars than the pyramids.
Really?
And
No.
I find that to be a shocking fact, but I also don't know why he would lie about it. But if you're thinking about, total spend, a visit to the pyramids is, like $10 maybe. And when you're talking about, dive boats, especially for the day trippers, you're looking at, $60, $70, $100. I didn't do it on a day trip, so I don't really know what that figure is, but it's not super inexpensive because it is a ways out from Sharm. So I find it a little hard to believe, but if you start doing the math, when Andrew's talking about there being 300 or 400 divers on a site, that's definitely one of them.
Yeah, okay, that definitely makes sense. I remember once I heard a kind of dollar figure on how much a manta ray in Borneo is worth alive versus how much they sell on the black market or in the fish market.
Yeah.
And when you show those numbers and you say like, look, like the poachers are getting $2,000 to kill a shark or to kill a whale, shark, or manta ray, but that same fish brings in $30,000 a year in tourism. Mm-hmm. That gives the government a reason to protect that species.
Absolutely. It's, selfishly, I want as many of them alive as possible so that when I go to dive Borneo, I can see as many manta rays as possible.
I like it. So where else have you been diving?
I have done a smattering of a lot of places. Cozumel, Indonesia, off the coast of Bali at Nusa Penida, which was surprisingly beautiful given the plastic pollution issue that they've got there. South Africa, Mozambique. I feel like I'm missing something. Oh, Vanuatu. Did I say Fiji? Probably should have started with that.
But that's a lot of places.
Yeah. Again, mostly a couple dives here, a couple dives there. And obviously Egypt.
Yeah. So if you were to kind of rank them, like which ones are your favorites?
Oh God, that's so hard. I've been unbelievably lucky in a lot of places. Gosh, that's so hard. I don't know.
Was there one that didn't live up to the hype when you wanted to go again?
Didn't live up to the hype. I wouldn't say that it didn't live up to the hype for me, but I know that at least the time of year that I went, some people expressed a little bit of disappointment with the south coast of Durban. In like October, the viz is not always amazing in South Africa, but I really enjoyed my dives there. There's raggies just everywhere you look most of the time. So I would say that was one that other people expressed that they were disappointed in it, but I really enjoyed it. So I would say absolutely go.
And a raggy is that a ragtooth shark?
Shark. Yeah, they're called, I believe, sand tigers in other parts of the world. Australia, I know for sure that's what they're called. But yeah, ragged-tooth sharks. They've got a mouthful of teeth. And you can see them, they don't have to open their mouth at all. They're just hanging out there.
That's crazy. Okay, and what was the next places that you want to go? Do you have like a bucket list of places you want to dive next?
Oh gosh, just about anywhere there's diving. I've never dived like the Similans in Thailand. I've never done any diving in Thailand, so I would like to at least give it a go. I know some people find that certain areas of it are overrated, but I'm excited for it. Borneo is a big one for me. Galapagos, of course, I think is on every diver's bucket list. I'd like to do the cenotes in Mexico. Gosh, Outer Great Barrier Reef is definitely on the list. I hear, depending on who you talk to, it's coral bleaching and it's done and it's never coming back. And, some people say, if you get far enough out, and because they are just really trying to take care of it, that it's coming back, which, fingers crossed that that's the case. I haven't done a lot of diving in the United States. Florida Keys are supposed to be beautiful. I know that you mentioned that the diving in Hawaii was overrated when you were talking to Andrew, which breaks my heart a little bit, but I'd still give it a go. Basically, there's not a place where you can get underwater that I'm not at least a little interested in.
I like that. And if anything, it's at the end of the day, it's like, as long as you go and with open mind and you don't have like dead set expectations, you can enjoy both places.
Yeah, absolutely. There's always something to see. And if you're diving somewhere new, there is some, even if it's the tiniest little fish, there's something you haven't seen before. Whether it's, a regional variation. Like here, Susan, one of our resident fish experts, was telling us about the regional variation on the anemone fish that's here. And apparently it only exists in the Maldives. And when you look at it, if you're not paying attention, it just looks like an anemone fish. But which
is Nemo, by the way.
Which is kind of a Nemo. But the ones here, they're sort of like belly fins are black, which is not the case anywhere else in the world. And so it's a very specific variation. And I didn't notice until she said something. And then, of course, on the next dive, I made a concerted effort to look for it.
Yeah, I actually noticed that. I swam by a few, and they were like, I don't know. It's almost like, when you see a car that is like painted matte black, and you're like, that's not the normal color.
Something's off.
Yeah, and it's just a little bit different. It was cool.
Yeah. And I found that they're a little more shy than anemone fish that I've found elsewhere, because usually I've had this experience in a couple of different places. If you get close in on an anemone fish and you kind of stick your finger out, they're very territorial. And so it'll come out and just give your finger a little nip, and it doesn't hurt. It just kind of tickles really more than anything, but they'll kind of nip your finger. And here they just kind of back away in terror. So, same fish, different ocean, slightly different behavior, and obviously a different look.
Yeah, it's cool. So the one fish that wasn't shy were these nurse sharks that we swam with.
One of them kissed my knee, and it was the greatest moment of my life.
I actually saw the video, and it actually looks like the shark kissed her knee.
Yeah.
Like slowly swam up to her, paused for a second, puckered up, kissed the knee, and then swam off.
Just backed away and was like, "Hey, love you." It's like, "It's okay, I love you too."
That's nice. Well, what do you think that experience was like?
I love sharks. Anyone who's ever dived with me knows I love sharks. And nurse sharks are literally, they're giant sea puppies, really. I mean, even the fully grown ones. They are very affectionate. Affectionate is, I guess, hard to say because you can't really judge a shark's intent, but they are very touchy-feely with each other, and sort of that if a human is in their way, that overlaps with humans as well. And they're just playful and fun, and last night was really cool to watch them all swirl around, and there were probably 200 sharks over our head at one point, and just looking up, especially into the dark, and with the lights shining up, just seeing all these white bellies, and nurse sharks don't have a whole lot of big scary teeth, so you're seeing what kind of looks like the underside of a catfish, but it's a big shark, and some of them were nearly 3 meters long, and so it was just kind of cool to be surrounded by them and totally unafraid because they weren't ever going to be aggressive towards us. So
yeah, it looks cool. Actually, when you're looking at the kind of silhouette of them when they're swimming up top, they look like big sharks, and they swim like big sharks. And you would look, and I remember posting this photo on my Instagram, and people were freaking out. They're like, "Oh my god! Are you okay? Are they dangerous?" And
they're puppies. They're sea puppies. They're really just cute and playful and totally fine.
But it is crazy that we have swam with 200 sharks. Mm-hmm. How many people can say they've done this?
I mean, scuba divers are a relatively small percentage of the population, and I would say there's probably not a huge, percentage that have had that particular experience. So, pretty cool.
Yeah, for me, just seeing one shark is cool.
Yeah.
And for most people that haven't been diving a lot, they're like, yeah, if I ever swam with a shark, it'd be crazy.
Yeah.
And here we are with hundreds of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, and if you guys haven't seen the video yet, I'll link it in the show notes here, or you can just go on YouTube, search Johnny FD Nurse Shark, I guess. You can find it. Are you on social media at all? You want to share anything?
I am, but all of my stuff is super private.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah.
So if you want to meet Katy, you got to come on the next liveaboard somewhere in the world.
Yeah, find me on a liveaboard. Come say hi.
What are the do you know what your next dive plan is? Where do you want to go?
I'll be back in Fiji for work at the beginning of March, so that's my next definite plan. One of my girlfriends who saw my shark video from last night, though, is chomping at the bit to get back to Mexico, so we may try to sneak something in before I take off again.
Okay, so if you see someone that sounds like Katy in Fiji or Mexico, you can say hi to her.
Yeah, come and find me.
Great. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so our last but not least guests for this special podcast, we have our dive guide and cruise director extraordinaire, Anke. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. So where are you from?
I'm Dutch. I'm from the Netherlands.
Very Dutch. Super
Very Dutch, yes.
And how long have you been working in diving?
Well, I started out in diving work-wise on these safari boats for the last 5 years. Before that, I had a dive center in the Netherlands, and I've been working as an instructor since 2005.
Oh, nice. Okay. Do you know that I used to work as a dive master?
Oh, really?
Yeah. 4 years.
Wow. Where did you do that?
I started in Thailand, worked in Koh Tao, Phuket, Koh Lanta, then Borneo.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I've done Koh Tao. The rest are new to me, but I've done Koh Tao. It was great.
Yeah. Easy diving.
Yeah, but you have water, you have wildlife, so you can have some fun.
I like it. So you've been to a lot of places now.
Yes, I have. I'm actually for the company not only dive guide, I'm what they call a flying cruise director. So that means that we have in total 15 boats in 11 countries. So sooner or later, one of these boats need to have a little bit of extra support. And then I'm one of the people that they will ask to be flown in.
Nice. And how many of those countries or boats have you been on so far?
I've now done I've been a long time in Egypt. I've done Indonesia, the Maldives, and at the moment I'm actually in the Bahamas as destination manager.
Oh, that's cool. And then in your, I guess you probably don't take vacations and go diving anymore.
No, the time that I have off, I try to spend with friends and family. The thing is also is that what I find awesome about this job is that you get to see how marine life evolves through time. And I don't think I would be happy anymore if I would just be somewhere for a week or 2 weeks to dive on the reef.
Yeah, I think it's hard because it's like taking a gamble. Where I know, like, when I was working at a place and I'll be there for 3 months or 6 months, and I would know what it's like when it's good. And then when people come, and they have bad luck for a week or two, I feel bad for them. But it's also, I always kind of just tell them, like, just come back next time, and,
Yes.
and maybe you'll have better luck.
Yes. No, that's definitely true. I mean, the thing is also is that not just you have some let's say basic things that you can always find on your reef, right? But as seasons change, underwater, water temperatures change and the sorts, you see different species appear and other species disappear. You have a moment where springtime hits and from 1 week to the other, suddenly you have 3 times as much reef fish around. Those moments, I just love those moments. So for me, to hit that, I mean, for sure, I've not been to Galapagos yet. I want to be there and I want to go there. And the likelihood for me to be there for 3 months is kind of small. So sooner or later, I'm going to book myself a trip. But if I got a chance to be there for like 2-3 months, yeah, I'm going to take it.
Well, that's a really cool thing about working in the dive industry is we're able to work in a place and dive for 2 or 3 months at a time, as long as that company happens to be diving there.
Yes. Well, in my case, because we have 3 fleets, Master Liveaboard, Siren Fleet, and Blue 2. We have so many boats, and there's so much things going on that, I have a good chance of meeting many of these locations, hopefully. I wish them all the best, but sooner or later, I hope they need my help.
Well, people just need to take vacations too, right?
Oh, yeah, they do. They do definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I guess before you started working at this company, where else have you dove?
Actually, before I started working as a dive guide at all, I used to manage companies in marketing, advertising, and design, and did my diving more on the side. And at some point, after doing that for 2 decades, I was done, and I flew into Egypt because I always felt at home in Egypt, and it was, relatively close to home because I'm coming out of the Netherlands. And I started working there. So actually, before this company, I was based in Egypt.
Okay. Oh, nice. That's the one place. Well, I guess there's a lot of places I haven't been yet, but that's the one place that it seems like everyone I meet has dove a lot.
Yeah.
But I have never been.
Oh, you should.
I want to go, and I keep thinking of it though as I'm assuming. I think now I realize it actually is very good, but I used to assume people would go because it was the closest place to fly to if you were from the UK or from Europe.
Well, I mean, yes and no. I mean, first of all, I think that if you look at Europe and you look what is the closest place with, a nice variety in marine life, from small nudibranchs to massive ash sharks, then yes, Egypt for sure is one of your best spots. The thing is also because the diving industry in Egypt is, first of all, the Red Sea is massive, and there are a lot of locations, a lot of places you can go. So if, for instance, you're back home, it's fall, and weather is nuts, and you need to go away, and you have a chance to go away for a week, you can book yourself into Egypt easily, and that is more difficult in other locations. So yeah, if you want to do it, easily done. Okay,
yeah, makes sense. But even if it was somewhere further in the world, it's good enough for people to travel to.
Yeah, the great thing about Egypt is you can find, as I said, you can find anything from a nudibranch to tiger sharks. Yeah, even now, I mean, I saw this week movies coming out of the Red Sea of whale sharks. Yeah, so everything is in there. But the Red Sea is seasonal, so different months will provide with different life. So it depends on what you're looking for. You need to pick, first of all, if you want to go north, the midsection or the deep south, and you need to pick your month, because every month it will change.
Okay, that definitely makes sense. Is there like a super month where kind of things overlap?
Yeah, it depends on what you're looking for. But for instance, first of all, we have in the Red Sea, we have in the north a lot of wrecks, yeah, because all these boats coming out of Suez, a lot of incidents happens, and all these wrecks are within diveable range, so you can make it a full wreck tour. This is not just for metal lovers, but these wrecks have been down there for so long that they're overtaken by the reef, so there's a lot of life around. And that means that on a trip like that, you'll get great stories and you can see a lot of marine life. If you're looking for pelagic life, then a great place to go is basically Brothers, Daedalus, or Elphinstone. These are offshore reefs, deep dropping walls, beautiful soft corals, but also pelagics. And I'm talking oceanic whitetip, which we are known for. One of the few places in the world where you can dive with them. We're talking about the scalloped hammerhead. We're talking about whitetips, as in reef sharks, gray reef sharks, tiger sharks. But even you can go as far as the whale sharks, as I said. And I've even seen makos and silvertips in the Red Sea. If you're looking for that on these offshore reefs, there are certain months, and probably the best month to go is the month of October. Month of October, the water temperature is starting to drop, and that means a lot of sharks are coming in again. So there's a lot of action around. If on the other hand, if you're looking for more cavern kind of diving, then beautiful hard coral gardens and the sorts, then going into St. John's is the area to go, which is probably about 80 miles away from the Sudanese border. There, massive variety in reefs, and as you go there, if you would go there in the month of April, you still have a lot of chance of seeing a lot of these big sharks. So yeah, these are the months to go there.
Okay, I like it. And what about here in the Maldives? What months do you think are the best?
Here in the Maldives, I mean, it depends on what you're looking for. First of all, if you're looking for the whale shark comes around all year. But sometimes of year, actually we're coming out of one of these seasons, visibility is low, yeah, because we have to deal here with an oceanic weather condition and with whatever the oceanic currents are bringing us. So at the moment we're coming out of a season where visibility is low. If, for instance, you come at the end of January, viz is going to be endless, but also the currents are going to be ripping. And this is something that you are looking for if you're looking for sharks, for instance. If you're looking for mantas, depending on how you'd like to look for that, mantas, we have them basically all year round. And depending on the currents, they will go either to one side or to the other side of the atoll. We have here mostly reef mantas, and these are residential. So it's a matter of going there. The thing is that mantas, they seem to get more social, or maybe it's a mating moment or something of the sorts, around full moon. Yeah, so if you're in the Maldives with full moon, the chance is bigger to see 10 or 15 mantas on a cleaning station than it is when you're not in a full moon. So these are things to keep in mind.
You know, what's funny is I think to a lot of newer divers, our kind of dream scenario would be warm water, no currents, you know, endless viz with no particles in the water. Yeah. But we also want to see big things. And it doesn't really work that way.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. All these sharks, you need to realize that most shark species that we encounter around these reefs, they don't have the capability to push water through their gill slits. And they need this water to go through to breathe, right? So as they cannot do that, that means they always have to swim to get the water through. Now, you can imagine that if you are in a place where the current hits the reef and changes in direction, that makes it easier for the shark to hang around because the water accelerates. That's why they like to hang out in certain places. So we are actually looking for good currents instead of avoiding them.
Yeah, and it also seems that when it's too warm, a lot of big sharks don't want to be out either. Yeah, there are quite a bit of sharks that are sensitive to the water temperature. So, I mean, if you're talking about hammerheads, for instance, they like the cooler water. Even the great white, which has also been spotted here in the Maldives, they like cold water. A lot of these species, what they do is they go to the deeper water to hunt, and then once they have a full belly, they come to relax and cruise around in the warmer bits. But if it gets too warm, they just stay deeper because for them there's no reason to go up to the surface at all. After all, they don't take a breath of air. Okay, so when I see nurse sharks or white tips or even these smaller reef sharks, in my mind, I'm 100% calm. I'm never gonna worry about them. I know that they're never gonna attack me. But if I saw a great white, I wouldn't know what to do.
Well, what I always do when I look at sharks is you need to divide them, or what I do is I divide them into two groups, right? So you have the apex predator, which is on top of a food web, and you have a shark that is not an apex. So that means that shark always has a boss above him, somebody that will eat him. These normal reef sharks, like in gray reef and the white tip and the swords and the nurses, they're not on top of the food web. So they're more likely to be scared of you than anything else. If you're talking about a great white or a tiger or a giant hammerhead, these are apex sharks, so they don't have an enemy, or hardly. And that means that they cruise the waters like they rule it, and they rule it. With an animal like that, you need to realize that their job on top of this food web is to help out with natural selection. So that means they're there to make the other species stronger. So anything that is weak, anything that is sick, anything that's not behaving normal, that will be part of their dinner tonight. So as you're in the water, what you need to do is, first of all, you need to realize you are not on the menu, right? Because you're not a fish. So you don't belong to their food web. Secondly, don't show any behavior that you might suggest that you are the weak one. So splattering about, because if a fish would do that, that would mean something's wrong with the fish. Or if we're diving with a group, stay in the group. Probably one of the best examples that I can give is that, for instance, if you have a cat and a dog sitting next to each other, and the cat just sits, the dog might sniff around a little bit, but will be fine. But as soon as that cat runs, you trigger the dog and the dog will run. And the same thing happens with these apexes. So what you need to do, don't move. Don't go up, down, left, right.
Okay. Because I think a lot of people, their instinct would be to panic, go straight to the top. That's probably the worst thing you can do.
Yes, that's absolutely the worst thing that you can do. And it is a very natural reaction because after all, even though we are quite divine, let's just call it that, we are certainly no apex. So the fact that we feel this as we see an apex is a very natural reaction because normally this would be a threat to us. Yes.
Yeah, and I think at the surface, it's the worst place because we can't even see, we can't swim around, we can't see what's happening. It's definitely the worst place to be.
Yeah, definitely. The thing is also is that as you're hanging at the surface, you're moving your fins a lot more. And the thing is also is that what sharks do, and I'm talking about these apex sharks, is that if they see something that they don't understand, flapping about at the surface, for instance, what they will do is they will come close and they want to check it out. To check it out, because they have an interest in food, they will take a bite. And that doesn't mean that sharks eat humans, not at all, because a lot of shark species actually spit us out because they don't like us at all. However, if they take a bite, for us the damage is kind of big. So please don't do that.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that our bodies are so frail that a small bite can just bleed us out. Yeah.
Yeah, these and after all, I mean, these guys are impressive. Yeah, I mean, they're big, they're strong, they rule their waters. And there's, in the end, there's nothing you can do about it. I mean, just enjoy whatever is coming at you. And if you're scared, just suck it up, stay where you're at, and enjoy the show. That's all you can do.
Yeah, I would love to see one. I mean, it's like, it's one of those things where it's a small chance of seeing one, unless you go, to South Africa, to Cape Town to go cage diving with the great white, where they chum them. But if I happen to see one, it would be great.
No, I mean the cage diving itself. I'm not a fan at all. I mean, I want to see a great white, but I actually want to dive with it and nothing else. And I understand that off Cape Town, there are actually facilities where you can do that. I cannot name you exactly where to go, but that is something that I have on my list to check out and see if I can go there, because that is definitely one of the things that I need to see. A great white.
I like that even someone who's dove so much, you still have your dive bucket list.
Yeah, of course. I mean, another thing that I'd like to do is you have in the north of Europe during the winter time, in all the cold waters, you have gatherings of killer whales, right? My God, I think I would be scared shit the first time I see one, but I would like to go there. I understand they don't do any diving with them, only free diving, but and you can do a safari with them. But I need to see that. I need to be in the woods with those animals and just, experience the magnitude of Mother Nature. Wow. That is mind-blowing.
That'd be cool.
Yeah.
So out of the places that you have been, which are a lot, what are some of your favorites?
Well, actually, for instance, my favorite here in the Maldives is a reef called Rajdu. Can be a challenging dive, but it is a reef with a massive biodiversity. So that means to me, as a cruise director and a guide, that every time I dive, I see something different, something new, or a combination of things that I've never seen before. And that is really, really, really cool. The other thing that I like is, for instance, in Egypt, my most favorite place in Egypt is actually St. John's. I love all the small swim-throughs, and I love the variety in reefs and the beautiful hard coral gardens. And then on top of it, being surprised by a shark. Yeah, that definitely does it for me.
So going back to Maldives, the Rashtu site, is that the one we did twice? Once in the morning, once in the afternoon?
Yes, 3 times actually. So we did a blue dive, and we did 2 times the channel dive. That's correct.
Okay. Yeah, and from I think I did it twice. I think I did the blue dive, and then I did the morning dive, and I was so exhausted from diving for 7 days in a row from then. I took a break, but then instantly when everyone came back, I regretted it because from the videos I saw, it was a completely different dive. The morning wasn't much going on, visibility wasn't very good, and the afternoon it looked like a different dive site.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, right? I mean, especially here in the Maldives, because we have these atolls. The atoll on the inside is quite shallow. And as you have, for instance, a current going out, that also means it will bring a lot of sand out, so visibility will drop. As the current comes from the outside in, currents, as they rip, they bring not only sharks, but as they come in, the water will be clearer. And that's the that's the hard thing, and also the beauty of it, because you can have one dive where you're thinking, my God, did I just do that? That was horrible. Do I need to go back? And the next dive is just mind blowing. So that is the great thing, and also the difficult thing here in the Maldives.
Yeah, and I guess the good thing about having so many dives or like such a long liveaboard is you have more opportunities to have the good dives.
Yeah, the thing is that we have a lot of options, and when you come to the Maldives, I mean, for sure you want to see yourself a manta ray. You'd like to see probably a manta at night, which is kind of special, especially if you're in the water with it. You probably want to see a whale shark, and if you do a 7-day trip, we're going to do all those steps. But if we then, because of changing currents, bad weather conditions, or something of the sorts, don't get what we were looking for, it's a miss. And if you then take a 10-day trip, or a 12-day trip, or a 14-day trip, yeah, we have options and we can play more. So, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, definitely makes sense. Okay, so we had the Maldives or Egypt. Where else in the world have you really loved?
Indonesia. Indonesia is Indonesia is something else. That is, I mean, I love my sharks, but as a diver, I also love enjoying my camera, playing around with it and sorts. And Indonesia is just the diversity and the small treasures you can find is just amazing. The amount of nudibranchs in every color, flavor, and size is there. Weird sharks like the wobbegong shark that hides and has this really weird structure around its face, or the walking shark you can find at night. The diving there, also a lot of currents, weird structures of reefs, or at least for me, because I come from a different corner of the world. But every dive can bring you something beautiful and just, the stunning life because of the currents, from really small to really big, and then in every flavor that you can think of. I understand that like 70% of all coral species in the world can be found in Indonesia. That by itself, wow.
Nice. And what are some of your favorite parts of it to dive in Indonesia?
One of the great places that I've been is I've been diving in Raja Ampat a lot. And in Raja Ampat, in the north, there's a dive site which is called Blue Magic. Now you need to realize that every dive site in Indonesia that has the word magic in it is called magic because of the chance of oceanic manta. Great. Now in this case, this is like a hill coming up from 35 meters, and on the top you have 8 meters, a couple of blocks on it, and these blocks are cleaning stations for the manta. But this hill is right next to the Dampier Straits, which is like a big channel where a lot of wildlife passes through from one side to the other. So anything can happen on that dive. Because there's so much currents around, and because there's so much big life around, and so much food coming in with the currents, it's just mind-blowing what you can find on the reef. I mean, for sure, if you see a manta with a span of 6 meters, that is just, manta, wow. Having experience with an animal like that, coming on a cleaning station, and they're so respectful and they're so elegant, and, you have this, mental thing going on with these animals. You have it with the reef manta, but with the oceanic, that's even worse, or better actually.
Yeah, especially because they're so much bigger.
Yeah, that is. I just cannot explain that manta. They tell me that the manta is the most intelligent fish, so that's not the dolphin because that's a mammal. And I like in my diving, for sure I like a beautiful nudibranchia, as I have my camera with me and I can make the pictures and the sorts. I really enjoy interaction with animals. Ticking the box that I've seen this or that is not so much my thing, but having the interaction. And the manta is definitely one of them. And they seek contact, and they seek communication, and they try to play with you. And I love it. Yeah, I just love it.
I love it too. I remember the first time I ever saw one, it reminded me of Star Wars, the spaceship covering the sun. And then it's unbelievable. I highly recommend everyone in the world be able to see them, especially the oceanic ones. 'Cause the reef, start with the reef one because it's easier to spot. You have a better chance of I don't want to say guarantee, but more likely chance to see them. But but then don't finish checking off the box until you've seen the oceanic ones.
No, I fully agree with you. It's a unique experience that that is something that everybody in the world actually should experience. Definitely.
And the same with whale sharks. Like it's very nice to snorkel with them, and I would say that could be like mini box one, but diving with one is a completely different experience.
Yeah, I agree with you. That's also the great thing I think about this job is that because you encounter so many different individuals, is that you get to see different personalities and different ways in which they handle situations and the sorts. And sometimes it's just funny, right? Because these whale sharks, they're endangered. So what we always tell people, don't touch the whale shark. And, if people touch him, we get angry because we need to protect these animals. And but sometimes we have whale sharks coming in, and especially here in the area in the South Aria Atoll is an area where you find young whale sharks before they're starting to travel the world. And sometimes we have a shark coming in of like 3 meters, and and then after dive, people come up to me, "Oh, Anke, I'm so sorry. I tried to stay away from the whale shark and I didn't mean to touch it, but it started touching me." Because these young, let's say toddlers, they just start swimming into people and they're so curious and they think everything is interesting. It's just, that's just cute by itself. And it's like 3 meter cute by itself.
Yeah, which is
so
10 feet.
Cool.
They're pretty big. Yeah.
Oh yeah, we're talking feet. Yeah, no, it's 10 feet definitely. And they're just, they're like so many life. It's just amazing to see how they live their lives, the way they behave, and how they seek interaction. To me, it's just an endless source of joy.
I love it. And we're running out of time, but any other kind of top dive sites in the world, or places that you've been to that you recommend? It all depends a little bit on what you are looking for and what your fetish is, right? Are you looking for... a lot of people have a fetish for seahorses or nudibranchs or the sorts. Then Asian countries are very good to visit. If you love sharks and if you want to see big sharks, then at some point you have to meet some cold waters and you have to go places like Galapagos, Cocos are definitely places to go. For me... As I said, I have on my wish list for sure the killer whale. I have on my wish list the great white, as long as it's free. And other than that, I don't have any specific wish list of where I need to go. For me, it's more about the type of encounter that I have. Let me explain that. I had so I've done this tour with this boat a lot, and you see places and corners on reef where you're thinking, all right, I would like to go there some moment where I don't have to guide a guest, because then I can do what I like to do. And so at some point I saw on Rajdu a masked porcupine puffer, great animal, and I love puffers, and I love them because they're actually very shy, right? Usually when you approach them, they turn their back on you, they're looking with one eye, and they're a bit scared. And so all these trips we're doing like 7-day trips, and at some point I got a 10-day trip, and usually we have Rajdu on the first and on the second day, and in this case we did the tour the other way around, so I had it at the end of the trip, and that means that all my guests are comfortable, they like to bimble off by themselves in the sort. So by the time that we jumped, I had a chance to visit this animal, and just hanging around and making it comfortable, putting my camera in the sand until the animal realizes that I'm not there to hurt it in whatever manner, and it starts bimbling around and looking for food and looking at you, swimming into your camera and the sorts. To me, that is just that makes my month. I love that. And have I seen porcupine puffers before? Yeah, millions of times. But just the way that happened, that's just, for me, mind-blowing. Yeah, I definitely agree. It's, if any of you enjoy watching Discovery Channel or National Geographic, imagine being there in real life, having that immersion, having that creature, basically interact with you in the same world. It's a unbelievable experience.
Yeah, I think there's nothing that can describe it. You just have to do it. That's it.
Yeah, I love it. So, everyone listening, I'm sure you're excited about diving now, if you haven't already been, and so go book your trip. If you have a job or if you run a business, have it be something planned for your next vacation. Or if you want to kind of go the route that we went, I encourage everyone who really wants to take a few years off of their normal job or career to become a dive master. Go through the training, work somewhere at a resort, and then move your way up to work on a liveaboard. It's one of the best things I ever did. I really enjoyed it. Did it for about 4 years. Anke, you've done it for many more years now.
Yeah. I've been around a bit.
Yeah, and it's a great experience. If you guys have read my first book, 12 Weeks in Thailand, The Good Life on the Cheap, it was really just about those 4 years. So check that out. And Anke, if people want to find you, are you on social media? Do you have a website or anything?
Yeah, I am actually. Probably the best and the easiest way to find me is through my website, because you can always track where I'm at. And my website is lovediving2, that's the number 2.com. If you're looking for me on Facebook, it's Anke, but now it's going to get hard because my last name is Westerlaken. So it's probably better to do it through the website, lovediving, number 2.com.
All right, so that's a wrap. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I know it's a little bit different, but I really wanted to be able to share this dive trip as well as all this knowledge, because we often read the top 10 dive sites in the world written by people who probably never been diving, but these are people who love what they do. They've been all around the world, so you can know this is good information. So share this with a friend who dives, and hope to see you next week. Bye. Thank you for listening to the Travel Like a Boss podcast. If you want to hear more, including the bonus How to Choose the Perfect Niche episode, join our mailing list at travellikeabosspodcast.com. See you next week, and remember, if you want to travel like a boss, you need to be your own boss. So start your online business today and start living the lifestyle you've always dreamed of.